It's your podcast. It's March 2021. My name is Ken McGuire. We've got Andy Murphy in the other super new, very fresh looking green edition of the Urban Gym wear. And we're joined this month for the podcast by sports psychologist and super nice guy as well, Richard Shanahan. Rich, how are you? How are things?
Very good, Ken. Thanks very much. And yeah, thanks for the compliment.
You're most welcome.
Long time no see. Here as well.
Long time no see. How are things with you? How has the whole kind of being locked away thing
lockdown
done for you or worked for you?
Yeah, often for 10 there, Ken. have we got the hour here, pal? Yeah, I've had a tough time to be honest with you. My relationship broke up early in the first lockdown. That was perfect timing. My mother died in May last year. So there's a few things going on. And I was just telling Andy, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer just a couple of weeks ago. And those tests were going on for quite a while. And so I had quite a journey in that. But having said that, like it's the absolute mildest form, and the surgeon, or not the surgeon, the consultant has reassured me not to worry about, etc., etc. I have to have another biopsy in 8 months, and hopefully that'll be it.
See how things go from there. That's entirely not how I imagined we were going to open the conversation. That puts a very different slant on it. There's obviously an awful lot.
There's lots going on. Yeah. It was a major journey for me, and I'm still going through it. So I was taking my own medicine for quite a bit of it.
Yeah,
it's a major journey, and then there's the lockdown and all of that as well.
And everything that goes around it. And Andy, how are you doing? How are things? It's been a few weeks since we've had a chance to catch up.
Yeah, no, I'm the polar opposite to Rich, because obviously people know me and Rich and how much Rich has played a massive role in my life and my career. But I have to say it's the best I've felt in like 3 years. Since I opened Urban Gym, people have known me like as Andy the way that I am, whatever, and they've seen an energetic Andy in the gym. But I'm thankful. I'm feeling great, but again, it's because I've been on I've been on my own journey as well as Rich, and Rich knows all about that too in terms of healing and Lyme disease and battling that. And I guess something that Rich always helped me out during my time working with him as well is that everything passes with time, and your hand never touches the same river, let's say. So I've loved talking to Rich and staying in contact all the time, whether it be in my fighting career or now business career, work career. And I just wanted to get Rich on today because he's the type of guy that, like, you just feel great after having a conversation with him, and I just wanted to kind of get him on our podcast this evening just to give a bit of like his energy and his mindset and stuff. And as he's talked about now, he's going through his own journey, but he's taking his own medicine similar to what I've had to take the last maybe 3 years in my own journey. But like I said, thank you for coming on tonight, Rich. We had on our first birthday, I think it was just after our first birthday in the gym, we had a seminar, and Rich kindly came down and gave a phenomenal talk, on sports psychology, but not just sports psychology. I think the terminology was more psychology, really, in a way, because as Rich said to me, when I first met him, was that everything affects performance. Whether you're, if I was to tell someone I'm seeing a sports, or say I'm seeing a psychologist, someone think that I'm mad. But when I say I'm seeing a sports psychologist, all of a sudden it's cool, So I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to get this cool guy on, Rich, tonight now, just to have a chat, delve into the mindset of not just athletes, but people in general, and how we can overcome the adversities which we all face as human beings. We're all going to have a tough time at some stage in our life. But I think by giving people tools that can help them during tough times, it's a massive help. So like I said, thanks for coming on tonight, Rich.
You're very welcome. And I'm nearly sorry I started the podcast that way, and I'm bringing it all down because I am generally very positive and I have a very good outlook. So yeah, I'm still here, still going.
Yeah, you're human. You're human.
Yeah, yeah.
It's another thing as well with athletes and people in general and all of that. It's people can relate. That's another thing, and it's a very unique story to you, Rich. And I think, as I said to you recently on a chat that we had, like, you know, it's you know, you're getting to tell your story, and it's practicing what we preach. It's like me in the gym. You know, I'm a gym owner. Let's say I run a gym. And I have to practice what I preach in terms of, you know, staying ready, let's say, training, look after nutrition, mindset. People see me as being Mr. Positive all the time, but hey, I'm human too. I'm not positive all the time. You know, we have our bad days too, but having tools helps, you know.
Absolutely. And it's like at the moment, you know, I'm going with the flow of things, and you know, as you know, I'm into running and do quite a bit of distance running over the last few years, and I've been training for just through a half marathon in May, and I've been clocking up quite a few kilometers every week. But this last Saturday I did a long run, and I was fairly flattened after it, and I got cold, and then for the whole week I couldn't get out. I didn't feel like going out, and I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go with it. Just going to go with the weekend. That's what I feel, and you know, it'll pass. That'll all pass. Just that's the way it is at the moment. And yeah, out the other end of that as well now. So we go for a nice long run tomorrow.
Excellent. Rich, can I ask you about that medicine? What was it that drew you to sports psychology? Because I know you've from what I know about you, there's the army background, there's the sporting background, there's a very competitive background in there. But what was it about sports psychology?
Yeah. It is from my sporting background that I got into sports psychology, and I was doing taekwondo since primary school, and that was in the 70s I started, and my instructors were hanging around with Tony Quinn, who was hanging around in Cork at the time, and they were exposed to Tony Quinn's way of thinking and a different way of thinking. And in martial arts anyway, you're exposed to an Eastern philosophy, an Eastern way of thinking. And my instructors were chatting to me about the power of the mind. And there was the line that I remember very often is that we have this amazing mind and we're only using a certain amount of it. And if we could tap into more of it and use more of it, then it would be amazing the things that we can achieve. No, the way that's phrased isn't probably correct. You know, it's not that we're not using enough of it. It's that we're using it in a particular way, or we're not using it in a particular way. But it fascinated me as a young child. It absolutely fascinated me in the power of the mind, and what we can do, how we can tap into it. Fascinated me since I was very young. But that's as far as the instructors went. They teased us with this, but never told us how we can tap in to using our mind in a particular way. And it became a quest for me through my entire life. And I was still in the army. I joined the army in 1990. I was a second dan black belt, had my own club in Cork. I left my club to my cousin, who's still running it in Cork, in Bishopstown. And I went off and joined the army and had a 9-year adventure there, which was fantastic. And I came back from Rwanda in 1990, the end of 94, start of 95. And I happened to come across a hypnotherapy course advertised. And I had seen some hypnotherapy shows or hypnosis shows. And I felt, wow, there's something going on there. You know, there's something going on with being able to tap into the power of the mind through hypnosis. And I was quite fascinated by it. One of the shows that I saw, I was away in Spain, I think, there was a guy, a hypnotist, made another guy stand rigid, like a plank, and then put him across 2 chairs. And his shoulders were on one chair and his feet were on the other chair. And he stood up on top of him. And he continued on his show, standing on top of this guy like a stage. And I just thought, oh, there's something very different going on there. And so I decided to do the hypnotherapy course. And it was fantastic. It was amazing. It introduced me to the power of words and how it affects what we imagine, and how choosing particular words will create particular pictures, and particular pictures will create particular feelings and sensations. I then went on and many years later, I worked with sports people when I was a hypnotherapist, and I worked in hypnoanalysis. It was like psychoanalysis under hypnosis, but also worked with sports people. And I worked with GA teams. I worked with Monaghan football team quite a number of years ago now. And years later, I went and did a psychology degree, and then I did the master's in sports psychology in Jordanstown. But I always go back, very, very often, go back to mental imagery and the power of words and how we use words and what they can create. And that's what I generally go back to. No, I didn't fully know how it was working. So I have the academic understanding and the scientific understanding of what's going on in imagery now. But way back then, I just knew it was so powerful. I knew it from my own personal experiences when I was using it, and I knew it from the feedback that I got from clients, and I constantly get fantastic feedback from clients when they use an imagery or just changing their self-talk and using particular words and speaking themselves in a particular way. And I've gathered evidence over the years. I've gathered my own evidence for it, and I've gathered evidence from clients, and I gather stories from people. And I think I'm a collector of stories as well. And I've often used Andy's story with other clients and in presentations that I give to teams or businesses as well. You know, the YouTube clip that you put together, actually, Ken, with the BAMMA fight, and the edited with the visualization, the mental imagery script that I had done for Andy. And then, you know, the fight ended just as Andy had predicted, because the content of the mental imagery script came from Andy, but you know, I delivered it and packaged it in a particular way and added a few bits and pieces to it as well. Maybe some old hypnosis as well, Andy. I'm only telling you now.
It was for me seeing that, and like I only get to see that kind of thing. And Andy, I'll get you to kind of talk about the personal side of it, but I only get to see that side of thing from sitting in front of a computer screen. And what I was handed was the MP3 from Andy of you know, certain you know, the way a punch is going to land or the way a kick is going to land or whatever way it's going to move. And as I'm putting the edit together, and then having watched like I had seen the fight at the time and didn't know this was a thing. And then Andy gives me the BAMMA clip and gives me your audio, and you put the two together, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. That was really like, you know, almost down to a T as to what was going on. Andy, can you describe that relationship, even like from when you start working with Rich to that visualization, that imagery? I mean, people who have seen the clip might get it. People who haven't seen the clip should really take a look at it. It's an eye opener.
Huge. But I even go back to that fight, that whole build up, everything. I that night I just felt like invincible, and it was just because of the stories and the imagery that I had obviously told myself. But I basically sat down with Rich. Basically, what happened was after BAMMA 26, I think it was, I lost to Richie Smullen by heel hook, and the whole fight camp really was spent a lot of time focusing on defending like heel hooks and leg locks and defending takedowns and, you know, not getting taken down, don't get taken down, rather than maybe focusing on me, you know, Andy, you know, thinking forward thinking, put pressure on, let the hands go, you know, hands up, chin down, elbows in, low levels, actions that I can control, not like don't get taken down. Because that's, as Rich will probably talk about in a little bit of time, you know, whether we say don't think of a bottle of water or think of a bottle of water, it's the exact same thing. And having spent a lot of that original fight camp, spending time focusing on defending leg locks, how did I lose my fight that night? I lost by heel hook. It was like I'd already subconsciously put myself into that position before the event occurred. Now, at the time, I didn't know that, like, but then I met this man, Rich, you know, and it was had a major effect, not just on my fight career, and would have had an incredible effect on my fight career only for the illness that I was diagnosed with recently. But that night on BAMMA came about as a result of basically Rich helped me unlock the door. I had the key all along. I just wasn't using it correctly. And basically I sat down with Rich after one of the training sessions. Miles put us in contact. I think it was myself. I think it was like Keith, Mick, and Miles was sat on the couch in Kilkenny. And it was the first day I met you, Rich. And similarly to what Rich said about sports psychology having a big, profound effect on him, when he started talking, I was like, he's fucking onto something here, like, you know. And he asked me a very hard-hitting question, if I'm honest, because I didn't know Rich at the time. He asked me, oh, like, how did you, like, what was your plan going into BAMMA? Like, what did you say in terms of, like, how were you going to win that fight against Richie Smullen? How were you going to win? And I remember saying, like, because Marina asked me the same question before I fought Richie. Was like, how are you gonna win tomorrow? I was like, oh, I'm gonna knock him out. But I was saying that I'm gonna knock him out, like, you know, but I had no plan as to how I was going to knock him out, if you get me, which sounds kind of mad in a way here. So I had no clear plan. Whereas when I sat down with Rich, he went through mental imagery with me. He had a chat with me. Like I said to you, everything affects performance. Now, at the time when I was fighting on BAMMA 28, which it was, to fight Kilfin, you know, Nathan was only 1 year old. You know, I'm married. I'm literally, my day was very, very busy. You know, I was getting up in the morning early, having a breakfast, dropping Nathan to creche, going straight to Kilkenny to train, traveling to WIT Arena to work, getting back home, say 11 o'clock at night, prepping food, going again the next day. It was go all the time. You know, so I had a lot of you could say a lot of shit on my plate, really, but you're living the life as a professional athlete as well. That has to perform in an arena, in a cage, against someone who's trying to take your head off and hurt you. Like, at the end of the day, that is the sport. You know, we're all martial artists here, but at the end of the day, it's the fight game, it's the hurt game. So having a chat with Rich, you know, he understood that everything affects performance, you know, from, you know, what I was eating, sleep, you know, Nathan being a young child, you know, relationship, everything. And then also training wise, you know, so changing the way that I was thinking had a massive effect on my performance that night. You know, I started to think of the things I could control, which was myself, you know, so getting to bed on time, make sure I was getting my decent sleep, training, focusing on what I'm good at, what I do well. If I've had a bad training session, for example, running up to BAMMA, which we all do, every athlete has bad training sessions, but instead of like beating yourself up after every training session, geez, I'm really crap there, I'm going to fight now in front of a couple of thousand. What if I get this, or if I get lost, I lose? If I perform this way, I'm going to get, you know, submitted, knocked out, blah, 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 it's going to be embarrassing. Instead of thinking like that, start to think, okay, in an hour and a half of a training session, what did I do well? You know, so automatically the mind is thinking, okay, in that hour and a half, I'm after, you know, I might have got submitted 10 times, but like I might have defended a choke well. I might have got a guillotine in there somewhere. So I start honing in on that stuff, you know. And again, leading up to that fight with Kilfin, something that was working very well for me in training was my body shot, my left rip to the body. I dropped a couple of guys in sparring. I'm never going to name names because I'm not one of them crappy fighters that this is people that you drop in sparring. Not like, because at the end they were all teammates, and you know that's our job, is to help one another out. But there was a couple of guys in the lead up to that fight. I was dropping with this shot, and I was like, you know, Rich asked me, how am I going to win my fight on BAMMA? And I said with conviction to him on the couch, I see that right hand and that left rip to the body. And that's what came about. And again, Marina will tell you as well, I had the headphones, just like Rich has on here now tonight. I had headphones going on my ears every single night before I went to bed. I got home from a long day training, working the arena, all of that. I get home, put my headphones on, calm the body down. So the first 5 to 7 minutes of practice hypnotherapy, you know, I'm just drifting off. I'm thinking about the texture, you know, in and around my eyes, the texture beneath my fingertips. I'm just slowing my breathing down, getting that little bit of oxygen into my brain, my body. I'm like, whoa, I'm like literally wiped out. And then the next part of the clip is, okay, I want you to focus on the time you were performing really, really excellently. So it's basically, I'm thinking of my highlight reel. So instead of me thinking about Conor McGregor's highlight reel or Uriah Faber, guys that, you know, that you see all the time, I'm thinking about Andy Murphy's highlight reel. What am I good at? Like being my own hero, being my own idol, and my own, like, people think of it as being cocky or arrogant. It's not cocky or arrogant, it's confidence, you know. And I was just seeing these shots over and over and over. And what was starting to happen as the fight camp was going by all the time, these shots were happening a lot because I was going to bed every night thinking of these shots. And then as I started thinking of these shots and I was dropping certain people, or these shots were coming off well, I was putting guys under pressure, that was then added to that highlight reel every single night. So I'm now getting a really good highlight reel. So when I got to get to the cage against Kilfin, I felt cool, calm, confident, composed. Everything that was on my headphones. Like I was just, and I remember before going into the arena that night, I went back to the hotel room. I put the headphones on. I just said to Miles in my corner, and Nick, I said, so go back to the hotel there just for 20 minutes. It's a 17-minute clip. I was laying on the bed, put on the headphones, had my gear ready, listened to that. Miles was like this on the bed beside me, took the headphones off and said, right, let's go to the arena. And I was just, I was, like I said, it all went perfectly to plan. Bar getting dropped. I actually did get dropped that fight. I didn't see that. But again, because it was in my head, it didn't matter what was thrown at me in terms of that. Like I just felt great. And I literally got up after getting dropped and I put my hands up in the air like that. And I just walked forward as if to say, like, that's your best bit. And you can hear Miles in the corner's eyes. Like, he's giving me everything he's got. He's giving me everything he's got. And that's playing on his mind as well. Because like, fuck, this guy is still going. There's nothing worse when you're getting tired and there's somebody coming at you all the time. You're already hurt. And then Miles calls for a body shot with 10 seconds to go. Andy, we need a body shot. Andy, we need a body shot. And then pop, body shot, rip, down, done. I was like, oh my God. I couldn't wait to see Rich after the fight. He was up in the arena. I said, Rich, I said, that must have been some mad shit watching that, because he knew the plan. Do you know what I mean? So nobody else, well, and Marina was buzzing obviously, but it just, like I said, that's the power. That's the power of sports psychology. That's the power that we all have. That came out to fruition in the fight game, came to fruition in so many other areas of my life. It just opened up a lot of doors where I was like, you know what? If I can do this for this in terms of sport, imagine what I can do in certain things outside of sport. And sure, here we are. I went on, sorry.
I think it'd be worth people listening to your very first episode again. I listened to that the other day, and you very kindly spoke about me on quite a number of occasions, and not just for the fight, but for building your business and stuff like that. And I was smiling when I was looking at the list of podcasts, and Uriah Faber was the most recent one. And I thought, how ironic that I'm on after Uriah Faber, to talk about an honor anyway. But, you know, you spoke about going there as a result of the work that we did. And because I recall you were nervous going up to Team Rhino HQ
yes,
a number of months before the fight. And all of a sudden you're going over fucking fight with UFC guys. And the other thing in that episode I was struck by was when Marina was talking about when you were looking for the unit. And she said it was amazing that she had visualized the unit. And when you came across it and you saw it, it was exactly as she thought about. And it reminded me of, like, when you set a goal, when you set a really strong goal, you begin to develop a really good, strong picture of it. And if you don't have a goal or a strong picture of it, if you have a vague goal or a vague notion of a goal, but you don't start to put detail on it, then you won't notice it, or you won't recognize it when you see it. It might be right in front of you. You won't see it. But Marina recognized it. It hopped out of her because she had visualized it exactly the way that she wanted. So it was really powerful. And the other thing that story reminds me of is it's amazing. Like you were talking about when you were talking to yourself, and the way that the camp was going for the Richie Smullen fight was like defending the heel hook, don't get heel hook, heel hook, heel hook, heel hook, heel hook. And that's what happened. So when you're thinking about that and you're talking about that and you fear it, that's the picture that's running in your head constantly. And it reminded me of that story that Miles told some time ago when he was up in Team Rhino HQ, and you were there in the car on the way back. And he said in all the whatever length of time, the hour and a half session, he got submitted once. And he was coming down in the car, and he said all he was thinking about was that submission. Not the hour and a half of fantastic stuff that he did, was that submission. And you know, like by the time you get back down to Kilkenny, you're submitted 100 times.
Yes. We had many trips. You know, me and Miles shared a car. So many funny stories anyway. What a character. But you know, we're both very similar in that I think we're both very driven. We're both passionate about what we do. And I think, you know, sometimes when you're like that, it's not too bad because it shows that you care, but that you can start to beat yourself up then because of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that sometimes as athletes and even business people, like when I switch the mindset a little bit to business, because you care so much, things can hurt that a little bit more, or you can hone in on you could do 99 things amazing in a day. But be one thing that you do maybe that's not great, or you mess something up and you get fixated on that. And it leads into more problems then or whatever. And like I said, you know, in MMA especially, it's such a ruthless sport. Like you see like someone like, even if we talk about on a world stage, someone like Jose Aldo spends 10 years at the top, you know, he's undefeated or whatever, and then in the space of 13 seconds there's a guy from Ireland cracks him on the jaw, and all of a sudden he's the worst guy in the world, he's no good, he's this, he's that, and this new Irish guy is the best thing, you know. And now fast forward a couple of years, Conor gets beaten by Dustin Poirier, and all of a sudden he's like the worst fighter now in the world. He doesn't want anymore. He doesn't care. He's not this, that, and the other. It's amazing the way people see things. But it just goes to show the power of the mind as well, you know.
But that's a good point you're making, Andy, as well, about focusing on a mistake. Like as you were saying, you know, at that level, it's probably not a bad thing, but it shows you care. But if you just focus on the mistake and run the mistake in your head all of the time, that's extremely detrimental. What is more beneficial is to run it in your head, to remind you, okay, I've had all this great experience, and I've an hour and a half of fantastic training. It's really good to remember that, first of all. But I also got submitted, and you can stop it there, and that's no good. That's of no benefit. But if you decide to work on problem solving it, okay, this is what I did that time, and this is how I got submitted. So what would I do if I was in that situation again? What would I do? And then you start to figure it out. And then lo and behold, you probably will be in that situation again, but you will have thought about it, and you will have figured it out, and you will have positively visualized the solution. You can continuously focus on the problem, or you can focus on the solution. You need to look at the problem, of course, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. You know, you need to look at the problem, and you need to focus on it and think about it, but think about it in a solution-focused way. And that creates really good visualization. Like you can go into that situation in your mind 1,000 times. Like you step into that cage with Kilfinnan. You only fought him once. Physically, you only stepped into that cage once, but how many times did you hit that body shot? You know.
Yeah. Every night, Rich. Every night going to bed. You know.
You didn't even need an opponent. You didn't need a cage. You didn't need to get chugged off. You didn't need gloves. But you could do it.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a little bit about that process, Rich? Because Andy's mentioned that after the Smullen fight, he meets you with the lads on the couch. He's meeting you for the first time.
Yeah.
What you're meeting somebody who's in a sporting situation for the first time, and they're coming to you for assistance without, giving away the trade secrets or lifting back the curtain too much. How does the process work for you? I mean, how do you get from seeing, for example, with Andy on day one as a complete newcomer to you, to guiding Andy along to what we've just heard, where everything that he's visualized, everything that he's worked towards and seen time and time and time again, without the cage, without the gloves, without the need for an opponent at the night, and listening to the stories and everything else. How do you get from complete beginner with somebody to that end result?
It depends on the person, and it doesn't take long, depending on the person, because what I do as a starting point, either with an individual or with a team, is I discuss some of the tools that high performing people use all over the world. There's 3 main ones, and you can hang a lot of stuff on that. And the first one is to set really good goals, to set specific challenging goals. They control their self-talk, or the stories that they tell themselves, and they use words in a particular way. They use their stories in a particular way. They tell themselves what they want instead of what they don't want. And what that does is it helps them to visualize it. So the third one is visualization or mental practice. And you can hang an awful lot of stuff on that then, and you can go back to that again and again and again. So I start off with exposing people to these tools, and I tell some stories about how people have used these. Andy's one is a brilliant one. There's a clip as well with it now. And what I'm endeavoring to do is influence people in a positive way. I'm endeavoring to convince them that thinking will affect everything that we do. The most important thing that we'll ever do is thinking. Given that you've this fantastic skill and talent, thinking is extremely important. And I speak about emotional control, emotional regulation. Say Andy is going into an MMA fight. As I would often say, look, yeah, somebody might be nervous going into an MMA fight. Somebody might be nervous going into a cage. Yeah, bloody right, they might be. They probably should be. But what happens when somebody is standing over a golf ball and they're nervous and anxious, and there's no one else there? What happens when they're playing badminton or something? And often, with a lot of people that I work with, they're phenomenally skilled, like phenomenally talented. I'm not going to tell anybody about their sport, even some of the sports that I do know about. But what I help people to do is control their emotional state. Because sometimes you can see that people are petrified, they're terrified, they're only hitting a golf ball. And sometimes they're petrified or terrified, and they're going into fight in a physical fight or in a combat sport.
And these can be people and are sometimes people, I would imagine, who are at the top of their game.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow, on many occasions. And they're fantastic at their skill. And an awful lot of times when people come to me, they come nearly out of desperation. They're fed up of physically training so hard and putting all sorts of effort into it. Andy was talking about the effort that he has to put in and had to put in. And they're fantastic in training, they're fantastic in practice. And when it comes to competition, their performance level is erratic, or it's up and down. It doesn't mirror what they're capable of in training or practice. So after a period of time, 1 or 2 sessions even, that when I begin to explain some of the concepts, begin to tease out, well, what's thinking all about anyway? Well, what are the elements of thinking? That it affects everything that we do. But what are the component parts? Are we ever taught anything about thinking in school? We're not, of course. We don't get a class on thinking, but we should, because it's so important. So I go through all of that, and I explain what thinking is about, and it's about, you know, words and pictures and emotions, and we create our own emotions all of the time, or the vast majority of the time. And the good thing about that is we can control them. It's within our gift to be able to control our emotional state, because you can't go down to the shop and buy a bag of focus or a bag of relaxation or a bag of nervousness. You create it. It's created. The only place that it exists is in here, in between your two ears in your head, and it's created with your thoughts. And guess what? You're in control of your thoughts. Other people influence our thoughts, for sure. So we have to go into that, and what other people say to us. So I work with coaches quite a bit as well. You know, what are you saying to your athletes? What way would you like them to feel? Is what you're saying now, is that causing them to feel like you want them to feel, or is it counterproductive? But when I met Andy, like there are a number of people that you meet, and you can see the penny drop. I could see in Andy the transformation that day. Like the very first time I met him, it was like a penny dropped, and he's gone, "Oh, Jesus, yeah, there's something to this." And then we continued to work. Then I did the mental imagery recording for him, and I say to people when I do the mental imagery recording, I was go, "Here you go, here's your medicine now. Go away and fight your fight." And it's 6 weeks before the fight. Go and fight your fight. Fight as often as you want. Be in there. Do that punch as often as you want. Do any other part of it as well. But I also include, and I'm glad to hear Andy saying that, I also include suggestions for relaxation, feeling confident, feeling strong, feeling powerful, feeling wonderfully good. And it's just to raise the mood, raise a person's mood, raise a person's sense of self-confidence. And the stuff about the highlight reel, I always do a little bit of physical relaxation, a bit of resourcing from the past. So in other words, think of it, and I could like you to imagine a time when you were performing really fantastically, and run in your mind. Imagine it again. Imagine if it's happening right here and right now. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the people, how you felt, and really recreate it in your mind. And do that for a while, and then you feel good. You feel calm, you feel relaxed, you feel positive and confident. Okay, now let's go into the fight. Now I'd like to go forward in time, go into your fight. Now, and you know, you go through from the warm-up. Take it from the warm-up, go through the story of the fight. And I record it, and Andy never has to actually think about that story again. I ask him the story once in order to get the content for the visualization. And I say, okay, tell me about your fight, Andy, as if it's over. And tell me the story of your fight. And you've had a fantastic performance. It's over now. And tell me what happened, and take me from the warm-up. And Andy goes, bum, 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 bum. Gives me all of this information, and I package it in a particular way and feed back the story of his fight to him. He never has to think of that again. He never has to tell that story again. All he has to do is put on the headphones, press play, and his mind is free to be in it, to be in that story, and to be in that fight. And the thing about it, Ken, is that not everybody does it. You know, I give talks here, there, and everywhere, and as Andy said, yeah, Jesus, you know, the members loved what you were talking about. Very positive, really brilliant. All it is information. That's all it is. It's food for thought at the time. It's a tool when you start to use it. And Andy worked it, you know. And Andy absolutely worked it and used it. He felt that was as important as his physical training. And if you ask any athlete, any commentator, any spectator at a very high level, what percentage of performance is physical and what percentage of it is mental. And you'd hear every day on the TV, oh, it's all mental at this game. It's psychological at this game, or at this level. And everybody will give you a number. They'll give you some percentage. And even if it's 10% mental, they say, but mostly they say it's like 60-70% mental. And the second question I asked them is, well, how much mental training do you do and how much physical training do you do? And you do like 100% physical training for at this top level, you're saying that it's 90% mental. So there's some imbalance there. And Andy went and rebalanced that. You know, he took his mental training extremely seriously. Miles does as well. Like what Miles did in the Tree Arena, like in the last Bellator fight, was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. The whole of the Tree Arena practically were against him. And that song was Shiman's song, Zombie.
Yeah.
The whole of the arena were singing Zombie for 5 minutes after the song actually finished. And like the hearers, I was like ringside, thankfully at that stage. I got some very nice tickets from Miles, and the hairs were standing on the back of my neck. I was overcome with this feeling and sense of emotion, and I was looking at Miles, and he was just nice and loose in the corner, and I was going, okay, he's got it, he's got this. You couldn't help but be affected by that energy if you hadn't worked on it.
He was probably the coolest guy in the whole Tree Arena that night.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
That whole arena, bar maybe the Rhino crew that were there, was probably against him that night.
That's right.
You know, just so cool, so calm, so composed. Beat Queally at his own game, you know, in terms of out wrestled. You know, he outstruck him anyway, but then to be able to control him at the cage, to get the takedowns, to get the back takes, to grind out the way that he did in an environment that like was completely against him, you know, was just phenomenal. But again, I knew from watching in the stand and from obviously being in the fight camp with him, because obviously I had my own fight that night, but from being a big part of that camp, I look back to Miles when he fought Norman Park, which is a big fight as well, compared to the fight with Queally, and it seemed like he'd done even more work going into the Queally fight, which is a bigger fight, let's just say.
Yeah.
Because he was just cool and calm the whole fight week, like the whole fight. You know, it was just
he sure was.
Walking around. The weigh-ins was a bit like, you know, there was just so much media attention on him, and he was just cool, calm, collected. Performance was perfect. I don't know how anyone gave. I don't even know where a split decision win. I'm biased because obviously I'm a teammate, I'm a good friend, but that was unanimous. There's no questions asked. But I was very proud that night. But again, I see firsthand. I see the work you've done with me, what you've done with Miles, the work you've done with the other guys in Rhino. And I always say it. I say it on the phone and when we're in conversation, Rich. Like if you can get in the head of the guys at Team Rhino, you can get in the head of anybody. You know, that's how I look at it. If you can get in the head of lads that are all from living around fingerless and fucking, you know, the stories we have to hear week in, week out with Andy, and you know, like you can work with anybody, you know.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Rich, with that imbalance that you were speaking about, so you know, be it rugby or be it championship hurling or something where the mental edge is the one that people are talking about. Have you seen over time, and I suppose it's probably become more apparent in the last couple of years, you start to hear visualization a lot more and negative visualization a lot more and mental preparation and all of this kind of thing. Have you seen more teams, more sports, more athletes not necessarily buying into it, but looking to put these things in practice and address that imbalance?
Yeah, no, they certainly have. Yeah, absolutely. The GA, the most the amateur sporting association is the most professional about this. They're like years ahead in a lot of respects with using sports psychology and even a lot of the clubs, a lot of senior clubs, intermediate clubs, are using somebody to work on the mental skills and the mental preparation or performance coaching, whatever you want to call it, for certain. Soccer not as much still. I worked in League of Ireland quite a bit, but not as much. It's certainly becoming more popular. I was even watching UFC last week, and Joe Rogan was mentioning, I can't remember which fighter it was. He said, I think the next thing that guy should do is see a sports psychologist.
Wow.
And he's spoken about sports psychology on a number of occasions as well. And somebody else had mentioned about visualization on it. So it's becoming very, very mainstream, very acceptable.
Yeah.
And like the way that I explain it as well, that the first thing that I need to do is help people to understand that, like, I'm not a counseling psychologist, I'm not a clinical psychologist, I'm not here because there's something wrong with you. We're not looking at abnormal psychology, we're looking at positive psychology, and what we look at, well, what of people who performed really well, what are they doing? What are people who are doing fantastically? What have they been doing? Not about when your psychology goes wrong. And there's still a little bit of a stigma about he's the psychologist, or he's the head doctor, or the shrink, or whatever. And it's a position of strength, and it's a sign of strength when you're coming, talking, and working on your mental game. And getting back to the very first question that you asked, Ken, was like the reason or why I got into it. And when I got into sports psychology properly, and I started working with all sorts of different fantastic athletes, and seeing them going from here to here and going from good to great, I kept on thinking, Jesus, I'm like the performance coach or the mental skills coach that I wish I had when I was competing. Because I loved fighting, and I really enjoyed it. I really did. And I won a lot of fights, and I won a lot of fights before I ever stepped into the ring as well. But I flipping lost a few as well. I lost a few, certainly, because I was thinking about, oh, Jesus, that guy. Oh, that guy is the Irish champion, or he's the European champion, or, oh, look at him, look at his kicks, and instead of focusing on me.
Yeah. And on that one, Rich, let me, if you don't mind me bumping in on it, but I often say, because you just mentioned there that you wish, in a way, that you had the knowledge you have now, back when you were, or someone like you coming to you. I often say the same. If I forget about the MMA career, I bring it back to my athletics. I used to run high level athletics. Like I run 359 for 1500 meters. I was running, say, 157 for 800 meters. I was running, say, South Leinster schools, Leinster schools, All Ireland schools. Bronze, silver, gold medalists, and all these things. And I remember running in races and being so nervous at the start line, like so nervous. I could be going to the start line and I have my spikes on and all that. And I'm having to do another quick run back to the toilet to go because I'm just so nervous. And again, it's good to have nerves because it shows you care that. But sometimes I was beating myself before even going into a race. For example, if I'm not so far ahead of this guy with 200 meters to go, I've lost because he's got a kick, whereas I don't have that. I have to be running from the front or this or that. And you can notice then sometimes, he ran a certain time last week, which means he's probably going to run the same again this week, and that means his PB is better than mine. But every race is different. I just remember being so nervous in these races that, like you said, what hits me most now after fighting in a cage is that on that starting line in a running race, no one's going to hit me. No one's going to double leg me. No one's going to elbow me. No one's going to run out off the side of the track and bump me into the water on the steeplechase or this or that. I was in control all the time, but I was so fearful of other people sometimes, and like I said, I beat myself before even going into a race. I was really saying, okay, he's running, third place is up for grabs today. So they're not there today. I can actually win today. And I'm sure a lot of runners do it. Or, I'm only good when it's sunny, or, I'm not really medaled when it's like heavy ground. So I'm not going to medal today because it's mucky. all these mind games we can play. I'm sure, like, the reason I want to talk about this too is because even in the gym, I have a lot of members who, you know, are members of athletic clubs, and they do fun runs and this and that, and sometimes get beat up because they're not running a personal best every single race, or they're not medaling, or, you know, they ran a marathon last year and now they run a marathon again this year, but the time might be a little bit slower, or the training's not gone as well, and they start telling themselves stories why they're not going to run as well. And I always bring it back to them. I say it to them all the time, because I've been in the same boat and I've listened to your conversations many times. And sometimes I just tell them, look, if you're going out training, sometimes just leave the watch at home. Just like leave your Garmin, leave your Polo watch. Just go out and enjoy the action of running. Go enjoy the sights, the sounds, the feelings, the smells, and just enjoy going for a run. Certainly on recovery days is a big one that I tell people, like, forget about your watch. Just go out and enjoy a run, and just enjoy the action of running. Just enjoy getting the oxygen into the lungs, open them up, loosen out the body, and then you'll be fresh for the next day or whatever. But the problem a lot of people have now is, like, again, they're sometimes owned by technology, and they start telling themselves a story. Oh, geez, I was like at 200 meters, I'd normally be at, say, whatever, fucking 31 seconds, whatever. Now all of a sudden I'm at 32, so I'm not running as well today, or this or that. But I again, it's all stories they're telling themselves. And in athletics, especially, it's an individual sport. You are in control of you. There's no one else is going to do the work. And I think maybe that's why, I don't know, Rich, here's a question for you. Do you feel that individual athletes, sportsmen and women, respond a little bit better, maybe because, for example, they're going to you one-to-one, knowing that you're going to help them improve themselves, whereas sometimes with a team, you might be getting ahead of one person up, but if, say, you know, 2 or 3 of the guys are it's a lot of shite, or like, that's just higgledy-piggledy, or they're, it can be harder maybe to get that across to a team of people. But like I said, one-to-one, I know from my life in sport, it's always been me in the mirror. That's my competition. And I say the same with business, by the way. People sometimes say about the gym and talk about competition and this and that. I'm like, you know, I don't get into this whole competition. And it's sometimes I'm always wearing. I try and emphasize it to someone I talk to. I say, look, not in competition with anybody. You know, and sometimes that comes across. I know people sometimes see it as an arrogance or whatever, but it's not. I know what I want with the gym. I know my mindset. I know what I want for the people that come into the gym. I know my strengths as a trainer. I know my weaknesses as well. And I know the path I want to go on. You know, I saw a good quote the other day, and I could get it wrong, but it's better to fail in originality than fail in imitation. And it's better to fail in originality than win in imitation. And it kind of really hit me. It was like, you know what? I said, that's damn right. And I also bring it back to my time in Team Rhino leading up to Bellator. And you asked me a question in the lead up to Bellator. I knew I was in a bad way in terms of physically because of my illness. But mentally, I was pretty strong. And I was always going to get to that fight. And I still believed that I would win that fight. And again, I think that's mainly because of the work that we had done. It was years ago, I wouldn't have been in that fight. But you asked me a question, you said, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And it is, here we are now. We're 2.5 years on. We're doing a podcast. I've got an urban gym banner behind me. Running a gym that I'm really scared every day running it. And we're in the middle of a pandemic now as a business owner. But I'm in a very strong place mentally, knowing that, okay, well, you know, I've got this far. And I ask myself that question every single day. What would I do if I wasn't afraid? You know,
cool.
It's it's something that hit me. It was a really good shot that day, because the 2-hour drive I had home from Dublin that day, I was just, man, my mind was just planning. I was like, I had the imagery in the head.
Yeah.
But going back to that question, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. It is like, do you find it a little bit harder to get your message across to a team than an individual because of what I was mentioning?
Yeah. I'm going to go back to the technology before I answer that question, because that's interesting for me. I like running with a watch, and I like running with the technology. I never run with music in my ears, because maybe it's the job that I do anyway. I like to notice what's going on when I'm performing well or performing not so well. I like to notice my thoughts. I like to be thinking about, okay, oh yeah, that's affecting me that way now. This is affecting me that way. And when if we go back to one of the tools, the controlling self-talk, every single time my watch bleeps at a kilometer, I look at it just kind of out of half interest. I look at the pace, and it doesn't really matter what pace it is. Now, if it's a screamingly slow pace, I'll be going, oh, Jesus, yeah, you want to start picking it up here. But if it's within, 5 or 10 seconds of a kilometer, I say something positive to myself. I go, geez, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. You're 56 years of age now. That's a really fast kilometer. That's fantastic, man. That's brilliant. Keep going. That's great. And it doesn't even matter. Like it could be, it doesn't particularly matter what the pace is. But I could, if I wanted to, oh, Jesus, that's terrible. That's really slow. That's awful. Oh my God, you lazy fecker. That's going to negatively affect the next kilometer and the next kilometer and the next kilometer and the run. But it's within my gift. It's my choice to decide what to say to myself when I look at that watch. And I choose to encourage myself. I choose to say something positive to myself in order to help me to enjoy that run and in order to have a better run. With regard to working with individuals or teams, I've often been asked which do I prefer, and I can't answer it still. I really like both. I think you can affect performance a lot more if you're working with an individual. But even individuals within teams, I think you can really have a positive effect on a team as a whole if one or two individuals, the penny drops for them and they start to use it and they start to bring up their performance. One of the one of the things that I come across with working with teams at times is that if the team loses, an individual often will take the burden of responsibility on themselves for the performance of the whole team, which is crazy. And what I often say to people is like, if you guys won the match today, would you go around boasting to everybody that, oh, it was because of me, I won that match. We were brilliant because I was fantastic. And because, that wouldn't be true either. So if you wouldn't do that, why would you beat yourself up all of the time if the team as a whole doesn't perform so well? And I often talk about like being compassionate to yourself, exercising self-compassion. So that's one of the pieces of medicine, Ken, that you were talking about earlier that I didn't get around to talking about. And it's when being kind to yourself, being good to yourself. And it's one of the nicest pieces of homework I ask people to do or encourage people to do is exercise self-compassion, be kind to yourself, be good to yourself. And when you're using self-talk, rather than giving out to yourself, so speak yourself up and just get used to that. And I have the opportunity to do that every time I go for a run, and every time my kilometer clicks, I can be nice to myself, and I can use really nice, compassionate, positive, kind self-talk, and that becomes a habit, like everything else. It becomes a habit everywhere else, not just in a run, not just in sport. Because what I say to people like is that if you had a friend who sometimes spoke to you the way you speak to you, because negatively, we wouldn't be friends with them. If we're giving out to ourselves all of the time, we're being negative towards ourselves, and we're putting ourselves down, and we're destroying our self-confidence, lowering our self-confidence, lowering our efficacy, lowering our ability, lowering our belief, our self-image. And if that was a friend that was doing that to you, you would not hang around with them. But you always hang around with yourself. You are always walking around with yourself. And sometimes we're walking around with ourselves as our worst enemies. So it'd be much, much nicer, much more beneficial to you in sport and in life if you were hanging around with your best friend and you were kind to yourself, you were good to yourself, you forgive yourself. Like, God, forgive yourself. We're only passing through anyway. And it will be a nicer, it'll be an easier, it'll be a gentler life, and you will be able to perform at a better level. Genuinely.
It seems like such simple advice, but yet so sound and so solid.
Yeah. And I understand it. Like, there's an evolutionary reason why we're predisposed to be negative. We're negative because we want to stay alive. We're predisposed to be cautious and go, oh Jesus, and not to trust situations at times, not to trust people. And we can be quite negative about people, about situations, but you know, if you're doing a bit of MMA or jiu-jitsu or something like that, you'll be able to handle situations anyway. But it's easy, and it's kind of pretty automatic to be negative and predisposed to being negative and thinking negative. But you have to work being positive. You have to work being kind to yourself. You have to work being compassionate towards yourself, and you'll reap the rewards. You know, just like all the work you do, Andy, you're reaping the rewards of it, man. And we all will. Yeah, it's pretty simple but sound advice, all right, yeah.
Does it take a toll on you, Rich? Like, personally, professionally, you know, you're dealing with a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life, a lot of different scenarios, trying to unlock that positivity through people. Does it take a toll on you?
It doesn't really. I love when the penny drops with people, and I love when people grow and develop and are able to perform at a better level. I love when people fall in love with their sport again, because people have come to me and they were on the verge of leaving their sport. They're at the wit's end, and people start to fall in love with their sport again. You know, because if you're doing everything that you can and your performance doesn't match what you're doing in practice, then you begin to despair. Then you begin to get annoyed, and you begin to ask yourself, what's the point anyway? And then going to training in the sport that you love becomes a chore, because you're thinking, oh, what's the point? But when people start to fall in love with their sport again, it's fantastic. And you know, it's brought me from incredible places. You know, I was over with Miles in AKA the year before last, when Khabib was in fight camp, and DC was in fight camp, and Javier was there, obviously. And I was with Miles, and he was like one of the family. He was a sparring partner with Khabib, like, and therefore I was like one of the family. And I had access to all areas. The gym was closed to everybody, but I had access to all areas. I had access to all these guys. I was stuck at St. Andy recently. I was like physically, my nose stuck up against the cage in AK, watching Miles inside the cage sparring Khabib, you know? I was going, Jesus, like you're pinching yourself. Like the one and only time I ever cornered for a boxer was with Christina McMahon. She was fighting for a world title fight in Juarez. It had been the murder capital of the world not too long beforehand. So we're in Mexico, in Juarez, and she's fighting a Mexican, and that was an experience and a half. It was phenomenal. It was fantastic. You know, I've been all over Ireland in different dressing rooms and different soccer and football stadiums as well. So it doesn't particularly take a toll on me, and I take a kind of a Rogerian outlook on this, as well as that the client or the person is free and responsible to do whatever they want and do whatever they wish, and it's up to them. And I give people information and give them some guidance, and if they take it, that's fantastic, and they'll work it, they'll do it. But if they don't, well, you know, that's their choice as well. And you have to allow people to make those choices also. So yeah, I'm well able to let things go, you know. I'm quite a calm fella anyway.
Andy, you made that choice. You engaged with Rich, and as you said, like at the very beginning, you tell people that you're seeing a psychologist, and it's like, oh, there's something wrong with this dude. You tell people that seeing a sports psychologist, it's like, you're seeing a sports psychologist. That could be pretty cool. And he's looking for an extra edge here. He's doing something. Where do you think you would be, whether sporting wise, or gym wise or business wise, if you hadn't made that step, or if you had, you know, has from engaging with Rich on day one, and I know you've kept in touch, like you've said, through the sporting side of things, and then into the business side of things. If that wasn't a thing, where do you think you would be?
I would never want to fight as a professional fighter, that's for sure. I don't think. We never went to Team Alpha Male because, as we touched on, Rich, I used to get to Friday training wise. Now you talk to Miles, talk to anyone who's trained with me, they'll know that I'll put the work in. They know that I'll turn up a train, I'll be early, I'm not running late, I have my shit together, I have my food, my you know, people who work with me know the drill, they know the stuff. But like, yeah, I was always just like, I get to Friday, for example, if we keep on an MMA sense, I used to say to Rich, look, I remember like going to Rhino for the first while, and you have Siri there, and Siri's fighting UFC, and Reds has been fighting UFC, and you're going up as a new guy, and you're coming home. Like, I remember the first couple of months at Rhino, come back on a Saturday. First time I ever met you, Ken, was in KCLR. I had this fucking huge black eye. And so you thought, who is this scumbag coming into KCLR to an interview? Do you know? And I actually remember the look he gave me. I was like, this guy does not want to chat to me.
The two look like you just been dragged through hell. And
that is exactly how I was. It's how I felt. And I had this throbbing eye, and I'm talking about the benefits of MMA and how it's great for the body, the mind. And I'm like trying to sell this to Ken on the radio. I'm like, not a good advertisement. But again, that was after a Saturday training session. And I associated Saturday with like, I was like, if I could just make it to Saturday. And these things were playing in my head. I get to Friday and have my stuff prepped and ready for sparring on Saturday. So I've already done, I could have done 12 training sessions already, plus work in the arena, plus the classes that I'm teaching as a fitness instructor in the arena. I get to Friday night, I just want, please God, give me 8 hours sleep so I can recharge my batteries, drive the 2 hours to Dublin, get my sparring 2 hours training. Because what happens when you're the culture going to Dublin on Saturday for sparring, they're all have to train all week amongst themselves. So me and Miles get there, whatever, and we're like the guys that they're going to put the lads in against, because we're a different body, and you know they're going to test their stuff that they've been working all week on us, and we're going to be testing what we worked on the guys to see what's working. That's how we grow, we develop, we get better. But I'd always get to Friday, and Nathan would be up like thinking all night, or like, you know, waking and crying, and I'd be getting up, Marina would be getting up, or sometimes I say, Marina, can I sleep? I'm going to sleep in another room or whatever. I'll sleep in the other room. But you're still hearing then Nathan waking up, and I feel guilty because Marina's getting up, going down to Nathan, or is still looking after Nathan at that stage. So all these things start playing in your mind, and you're going up to Dublin then in the car, and you're already tired. You're getting a coffee, then you're saying, this coffee is hopefully going to save me. And the other thing as well is Miles can often be late meeting up with you. So sometimes you don't even have time to get that fucking coffee, because you're like, Miles, we got to hit the road, because if we're late, Andy's going to kill us anyway. So I'll be doing more rounds. So I said to Rich on the first time, I said, I get to Saturday for spar day, and I'm going up there, I'm training with sharks. I felt like I was going in swimming with sharks. And this is the important thing to get across. I was saying I'm going training with sharks, but I didn't see myself as a shark. I was putting these guys on a ladder. I was putting like Neil above me here. I was putting Redzer above me here. I was putting, you know, guys above me all the time and saying, oh, you know, I'm here, there. So I was a pretty bad sparring partner for a lot of the lads, because what was happening was I was going into these sparring rounds with my hands up, my elbows in, chin down. I was just kind of trying to survive the round. They were crap rounds. I wasn't doing myself any justice, and I wasn't really helping them either, because I wasn't giving them the best version of me. So no one was really growing. The only thing that was getting better for me was my conditioning and this heart and this durability. That I was just so, that was the one thing about me. I was just like, I see myself even now. I just see myself as a tough guy. Some people might not see that because you see a happy guy, but I'm just like, I am probably one of the most competitive guys. When I get in there, when I get submitted or whatever, I get up, I go again. I just keep going. I keep going to that. I always say that. But what started to happen when I met Rich was then it started to get into my head, like, you know, and saying, well, what do you bring to the table? And start talking about my own highlight reel and, you know, getting to Rhino. How do you want to feel? Tell me, Andy, how do you want to feel when you get to Dublin on a Saturday? How would you like to feel? So now I was like, oh, how would I like to feel? I'd like to feel fresh. I'd like to feel strong. I'd like to feel ready. I'd like to feel like a shark. You know, I want to, you know, so I started telling him what I wanted to do. And then he just started, he got in my head, he started telling me all these things that I was going to do. And what happened then was, like, I started putting on the headphones, he done the audio with me, and I started going up there, and, you know, I was having fucking brilliant rounds with Redzer, and I was, you know, Redzer's got a great judo throw, hip toss, and leg locks, and, you know, I was starting to defend this stuff, and then I was trying to attack stuff. And then I remember one time I even attacked the heel hook on Redzer, and Andy just looked over at me, kind of laughing, smiling, and saying, that fucking cool, she went and tried to do a leg lock or a heel hook on Redzer, like, you know. I didn't get it, but the fact that, like, I even went for it, I was like, Jesus, like, this is a different guy. And the guys in the gym could start to see it too. And then the sparring rounds started to get a lot better. And then it was like, I was going to Saturday. I was looking forward to going to Saturday. I couldn't wait to get to Saturday. I was just ready to go and test myself. And it's nearly like, you know, when you're a kid and you just really want to impress your dad. You know, when you're playing like soccer or whatever, and your dad comes to cheer you on or go support you in something. I just felt like I was going there on a Saturday. I wanted to show Andy, like Ryan, head coach, I wanted to show him how good I am. And like, I just had this sense of like I just had this confidence. I can't really put it into words, but just felt confident, and you can't beat that feeling. You can't beat feeling good. You even said that in the video. I'm saying so, it's on my headphones. So just think about, like, just think how good it feels to feel good about yourself. That is on my headphones, and it's all stuff that I've created myself. But I'll always say as well, I'm talking about all the positive stuff, and we talked about me winning as a fighter as a result of visualization and stuff. But I have to say, the other thing as well is, like, I lost my last 2 fights as a professional athlete. And I was really upset about that. There's something that I can't ever take back. I probably shouldn't really fought them, but if I'm told, because of my health situation. But I don't feel, to get back to your question, Ken, I don't feel that I would have fought those last two fights. I wouldn't have been able to fight those last 2 fights. I wouldn't have been able to get into the cage. I wouldn't be able to train if I didn't have the knowledge that Richard had given me, because I was fighting for the last 2 years of my career with Lyme disease. I didn't fucking, like, I knew something was wrong, because obviously I was having brain fog, I was dizzy, I was anxious, my chest was killing me, upper back. The only thing that was keeping me going was this. I was like, I want this. This is my identity. You know, I've put so much into it. I can do this. I just put. I even messaged Rich at once. I said, look, Rich, I'm really struggling. I'm like, I'll be honest, Ken, like, there's a time where, like, you know, I was just, people see me as a positive guy, and I like thinking of myself as a positive guy, but I was really struggling. There's many times at Team Miles Kenny, I finished training with Miles, I got out into the car and I literally started crying. I remember asking Marina one day, I rang her and I said, Marina, can you just ring work for me and just tell them I won't be in today? Because I was just so cloudy. This was like in the lead up to Bellator. And I just went home and I spent the next 3 days, no word of light, in bed, because my brain fog was so bad. My dizziness was coming back. I was trying to keep my weight up and I couldn't keep my weight up. I was at 68 kilos the whole fight camp at Bellator. Killian Doyle was trying to get my nutrition up and my weight up, and I was eating, I was fueling, and I couldn't keep my weight up. Normally as a fighter, Ken, I was walking around at 74, 75 kilos. I would cut weight to make 66. I didn't even have to get in the sauna for Bellator. I was like, and that's not a good thing, by the way. I like, when I look at, if you look at pictures of me in the fight at BAMMA 28 and you look at the pictures of me in the Bellator cage, they're 2 different athletes. One is looking pretty weak, gaunt, there's grey in my eyes. I was in a bad state, but again, visualization wise, I put myself in a position where I felt cool, calm, composed, collected. I still visualized that I could win that fight. I still had an amazing week. Bellator fight week. Wow, you're not going to say no to that as a fighter. Like, you know, 33 years of age, you know, you get called to go on Bellator. You're not going to say no. You're a fucking idiot if you do. You know, you've worked all your professional, or say amateur career. You get offered this fight. If I only had one arm, I would have still fought that, got into that fight. I probably would have been better off with one arm, I'd say. And that's not a joke. I'm freaking serious with that. But like, so you asked me on a serious level, where would I be? I'd be a much different person. And even being able to switch from Andy the fighter to now running a business and saying, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I can't fight anymore. But like, there's a thing on the wall at Team Alpha Male that says, don't let the things you can't do affect the things you can. I was like, okay, my body might be letting me down here, but I still got so much bloody knowledge between these two mashed up ears. I've accumulated so much knowledge over my professional career in terms of health, fitness, wellness, athletics career, professional fighting career, as a parent, as someone who has to juggle a lot of stuff. I understand in terms of the gym aspect of things, how hard it can be for somebody maybe to get into the gym for an hour. So I want the person who comes into the gym to me to have the best hour of their day in my facility. I want the best hour of their day. I want them to leave thinking like, that was the best part of my day today. And kind of look forward to coming back, rather than what Rich was saying there, whereby you can fall out to love with training, you can fall out of love with your profession because you're beating yourself up. Or for example, if you're, say, let's just use the analogy of a female who's maybe mid to late 30s, has 3 kids, full-time job, you know, and is struggling to get out of the house to get a workout in. But it's all she's seeing all the time is on Instagram is all these different fucking fit fams and hashtag whatever, and these selfies with, like, you know, the lady with the bum and whatever, the wave, and then they're saying how great they are because they've had the food and all this sort of stuff in the training. I trained twice today. I've had my food prepped and this, that, and the other. What's your excuse? I try and get rid of all that sort of stuff. And I just kind of get the whole idea of what Rich says. Think about how good it feels to feel good about yourself. And from my own experience, you can't beat feeling good about yourself. And that's why we have above our door. This is our happy place. When someone's leaving, it's the last thing they see, because I want to create that. And again, as Richard says, you can create that between here. We have the power to do that. But yeah, I know I've thought a lot, but I'm just really passionate about this. And I've tried to help so many people. I put stuff up about visualization. Some people think it's voodoo and this and that. As Richard said, it's a tool until, you know, you actually use it, you know. And a lot of people have all the skills, the attributes, the tools to get them to where they want to go. They just have to use them. And I'm just trying. I'm genuinely. I'm just like a messenger. I'm just trying to pass on the knowledge.
I love that story, Andy, about when you're going to Team Rhino first, and I've told that story on quite a number of occasions about you getting more and more nervous the closer you got to Dublin, and by the time you got to the door of Team Rhino HQ, you were very nervous. And I recall you telling me that story, that analogy of the ladder. And you're saying, I'm down here in the first rung of the ladder, and these guys are up here, and then you're putting people on different rungs of the ladder. And I remember saying to you, like, the ladder doesn't even exist, Andy. You're putting people on different rungs of the ladder, but that ladder doesn't even exist. You've created that ladder. You've created the rungs. You've created a hierarchy, and your Team Rhino as well. And like, those guys are your teammates. You're a professional MMA fighter. They're professional MMA fighters. You do well, you're representing Team Rhino. You're going in there and you're sparring them, you're representing Team Rhino, and they'll do well, you'll do well, everybody does well. So they want you there, you belong there, so walk in like you belong. And that's what I remember saying to you, like, instead of thinking about, oh God, these are all the sharks in there, and like, use that time coming up in the car wisely, and just change what you're saying to yourself, change that story. And it's lovely to hear you saying about, you know, you just became more and more confident. You started fighting better, becoming a better a better sparring partner. Your own sparring became better and better, and you became a better athlete. And all that you did, the only thing that you changed was your mindset. That's all. And I love that phrase about change. And, you know, they say that, oh yeah, change can take a long time. Sometimes change takes a very long time. And yes, it can. But change happens at the speed of thought. And change happened for you that day when I was down in Kilkenny, that very first day, when that penny dropped. I could see it. I could sense it. I could feel it. And that was just the speed of thought. And everything else from there on, it was like a roller coaster, you know, in a positive direction, or mostly in a positive direction anyway. Things outside your control.
Yeah, but exactly. What you said, things outside my control. I couldn't control. I don't know who put a tick wherever and got me to do whatever. But like I said, I've said it all throughout this pandemic as well. You know, control the controllable. You know, there's no point in whinging and get on about, you know, I see there's a lot of negativity about government this and, you know, radio news and cases and this and that. And it's just infiltrating the mind. And if you spend so much time worrying on that, you won't. The thing is as well, if you worry about what everybody else is doing, you get nothing done yourself. But just to go back to Bellator, 2 weeks before I fought Bellator, I had possibly one of the worst, if not the worst, training session of my life. Like, I mean, life. I remember getting up to Dublin on the Saturday, and it's after all the work we've done anyway, Rich. But like, got up and I was getting that foggy day, brain fog, was feeling pretty weak, was feeling tired. And it was all because of the condition, nothing to do with in my mind. But I got there, I had a terrible training session anyway. But I remember Andy Ryan, in fairness, after the training session. Now, I mean, I got rocked in that training session. There's times where I was like, man, what is going on? Sparring, it was horrible. It was horrible. So it was 3 weeks before, because I had another training session the following week in Dublin. But I remember Andy just said to me after the training session, and you could see I was a bit down. He hadn't seen me down for a good while, because it's obviously I've done a lot of work with yourself, Richard. I'd like to see myself as a pretty positive guy, and a guy in training that would have a bit of crack with everybody and that. But after that training session, I was really like, fuck. I was like, I'm not the same. I was really kind of in my head. I was like, I'm not the same guy. And I'm fighting on Bellator. I've got all these tickets sold, and there's so many people who support me, and they're thinking that I'm this guy still. And here's me now. And I was really down. I was really down. Not verbalizing it, but thinking it. You know what I mean? I wasn't talking to anybody. I was just on my own. And Andy Ryan came over to me and just put down and I said, Andy, you're here, we just need you here. Still 3 weeks, you know, you'll be back, you'll be great, you'll do great. He said, well done coming. He actually said to me, he said, well done coming up today. Because you could see I was tired.
Yeah.
And you said to me, he actually messaged me out later on that day. So I just wanted to push me that day. It's nearly like a Shark Tank kind of thing, just to make me feel like, as in like the fact that I felt that way was okay. It's good to feel it today rather than in Bellator. Yeah. And I came back the following week and I had like an unbelievable training session. But I remember driving home that day. I think I rang you on the way home, Rich. I remember just saying I left that training session feeling great in the end. After having the worst training session ever, I felt great because Andy had literally, you know, drill sergeant, put the arm around, had a bit of belief in me. He was like, you're here, we need you here, you get there, you know, well done. Back next week, whatever. Yeah. Like I said, I couldn't wait.
Good coach.
Yeah, really good coach.
Coaching.
But what you said there about like working not just with athletes but with coaches, and Andy could have easily went the other way. And a lot of other coaches might like, Andy, that is shite. You need to, you know, like what's going on, blah blah. If he had done that day, I'd have beat myself up. Who knows what would happen? I might have said, you know what, I'm out now. You know, this can't do this. You know what I mean? But I left that training session wanting to come back the next week and make amends in a way. And I had a great week training. But again, it's amazing that you have the power within your own ears to change how you're thinking in literally an instant. You said that on the journey home. You said, see that, Andy? You have the power to create these thoughts yourself, good or bad. Yeah. So you better think good ones.
Yeah.
Conscious, Rich, that when we when I met you first, it was a Rambling Rhinos podcast in 2017, 2018. And at that stage, I think we set the record for the longest podcast of the entire series for Rambling Rhinos. And we're very close to broaching that or breaking the urban gym record for conversation for tonight. Before we run out of time altogether, one of the biggest things and one of the hardest things that people can do is to take that step and go, okay, I need a bit of support with this. I need a bit of advice with this, and I need to reach out to somebody and have a conversation, even if it's just having a conversation. If somebody wants to do that with you, how does it happen? How do they reach you?
Generally, they can look up my website. It's inspiresportperformance.ie, and they generally either email me or ring me. You know, my mobile is 087 666 3354, specially chosen for me, 666. But yeah, feel free to call and text, and we'll have a chat. And as I often always say to people, the first chat that we have on the phone is on a no obligation basis on both our behalves, because somebody just may not match a person, or somebody may not think, they might have a different idea of what I do than what they might want. And so, you know, we'll chat, free charge. It's absolutely no obligation on either end. But we figure things out generally.
And last but by no means least, we typically wrap up the podcast with a kind of a closing words segment. So based on everything that we've spoken about this evening and everything that we've heard, is there anything that you yourself, Rich, would like to finish on?
I think just bearing in mind the way things are at the moment is, with the pandemic and everything, is just be kind to yourself. Be kind, and you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'm really fed up of the lockdown at the moment. I am extremely fed up of it, I have to say. And I was walking out the other day, and I just got this. I was walking to the shop, and I just got this flash and thought, an image about getting in the car and driving. I just said, I'd love to be driving down the road anywhere, but probably Cork. I'd like to have a coffee beside me and have a podcast on, your podcast, obviously, and listen to it and cruising down the road to Cork. And then I got, oh, Jesus, and I can't, you know, and people are really fed up of things at the moment, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. Look at the way the Brits are going at the moment. You know, they're opening up already. They're starting to open up. They're going to be fully vaccinated by June or something. We're a little bit behind, and we're a little bit behind because of supply, but it's coming. We waited long enough. So just be kind to yourself, exercise a bit of compassion, exercise a bit of patience, and we'll all be back on the mats before long again.
On the mats and in the gym, on the couch for the coffees with the podcast.
Yeah.
Microphones in hand.
Absolutely.
Andy, any closing words for you?
Yeah, no, it just hit me there, Ken, when you said about Rambling Rhinos' first podcast. We had an amazing podcast, Rich, but that was literally at the start of my whole journey with injury. You know, I remember I literally that week I rang the doctor and I'd seen the doctor. I rang on the Monday. The whole stuff starts on a Saturday after a Rhino training session, phenomenal training session. Started getting busy, got on with work to go and all that. Got to Sunday, was still struggling, and then Monday I had to make the call. And I made that call to the doctor. Went to the doctor knowing that I'm going to be ruled out of a big fight after spending the time at Alpha Male and training camp and being in the best shape physically and mentally of my career. And then in the space of an hour, that's all ruled out. And then 3 years on, and here I am now on a podcast with you again on a phenomenal journey and a different journey. But if I'm honest with you, Rich, I probably wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for you. So just genuinely thanks, as always, for being a great friend. Thanks for being a huge mentor. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom on the podcast. I hope, as I always say, if someone just takes one thing from tonight's chat and adds it to their game of their Arsenal, then it's been a very worthwhile listen, like, you know. So just thanks, just genuinely thanks so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it, and love chatting to you as ever. Absolutely.
Well, on that note, this has been your podcast for the month of March. Call it our getting close to the end of lockdown special. We'll see what happens. I've been Ken McGuire. Andy Murphy has been on screen here beside me. Our guest today, Richard Shanahan of Inspire Sports Performance. Details and links on how to find Rich will be online, urbangym.ie, and you can subscribe to the podcast in a load of different ways: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever it is you do your podcast listening. And until we get to do this again, which will be very soon, take care.